Well, welcome everyone. This is St. John's University Power Hour, and I decided to do it outside. I had a little bit of an idea, and I will admit it fell through. There's a bunch of my Italian friends at this park. It's Bound Park in Northern Flushing, and they usually play bocce, but today is very humid, so they decided to play cards. And when I approached them, they were in the middle of a serious card game, and they're very nice Italian men. And I asked them if they would like to be part of the Power Hour show, just to give us a little Italian flair to start us off on this wonderful tour that we're about to partake with Professor Cantelmo. Once again, this is our last of a three-part series, which was wonderful and very well received by the alumni. So thank you, Doug. Thanks for doing this for us. I also want to do a shout out to everyone. I hope all of you have power. If you don't, my prayers are with you, and I hope you get it very, very soon. I'm sitting here in the park in the shade, but it's very humid, and I am perspiring. So I feel your pain if you don't have any power, because it has been very warm these past couple of days. I think today is appropriate, our topic for today, because I think we all need a little escape, and to take us a little bit away to another wonderful place that we love is Italy, and just get away from New York and all the negative news, and just think of something positive and look at beautiful scenery, because Doug, your pictures are so magnificent. I love them. And I know everyone's been commenting as well. And I don't know, did you just see somebody popped, there's a chat that just came up,
So
something
someone
about
asked
your dad?
someone asked if I'm related, and yes, he's my father.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
And your dad is living where now?
We're down in Allendale, South Carolina,
So
on the
that's right,
water.
there,
He's
South
absolutely
Carolina,
loving it,
right.
and he'll
Great.
actually be watching the YouTube version of this later, so he's very
Oh, I
excited
was
for
going to
this.
say, I hope he's live with us. It
Yeah.
would be nice to say hello in
Yeah.
person. But yeah, send him our regards. And if he's watching this recording, we miss you. We appreciate all those wonderful trips you took the students on to Bermuda. I'm sorry I met your dad at the end of his career, and unfortunately, I didn't get to take advantage of one of his trips, because we did talk about bringing the alumni there. So I don't want to take up so much time, because I know Northern Flushing is, although beautiful here, as you could see, I'll scan the pond a little bit for you. You could see the park and my friends here, the Canadian geese. And but although it's very pretty, I think Campania, am I saying it correctly?
Campania.
Is probably a little more interesting. So with all that ado, I'm going to turn the computer over to you, Doug. Thank you,
Sounds good.
everyone. Thanks for joining
Thank
us.
you. And Lori, I'll let my dad know that you said hi, master's student from 1984.
Yes, I
So
saw
that's
that.
wonderful. That's
I'm going
wonderful.
to turn my video off now so you have a good connection.
Sounds good. All
Okay,
right,
thanks,
I'm going
Doug.
to be sharing my preview, and I'll go full screen. Sue, you can see this, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is going to be part 3, and in an odd way, volume 2 of Southern Italy. I decided to break up Southern Italy into different sections because there's so much content there, and there was so much interest in Southern Italy. Last time we did Abruzzo, and we did Sicily. This time we're going to do Puglia and Campania. And so within these two parts, we're really going to explore the history, the culture, food, and then there's also going to be a little bit of a personal story at the end that I think you'll enjoy. So to start off with Puglia is the heel of the Italian peninsula. If Italy is shaped like a boot, Puglia is its heel. And so with Puglia, you have an amazing diverse region that goes along the Adriatic coastline and kind of like points out into the Mediterranean itself. Because of its location and historically not having as advanced infrastructure as parts of central and northern Italy, and even other parts of southern Italy, been less touristed than, let's say, places like the Amalfi Coast and other places, even in Sicily. It is one of my favorite regions in Italy. I always say that for a lot of the regions, but this is really, I would say, if St. John's decided, hey, we're going to do an additional campus in Lecce, sign me up. It's an amazing region that has so much kind of infusion of different types of culture. So we talked about this on the last Power Hour talk, but the history of Southern Italy is pretty complex, but one of the fundamental layers of its history is the ancient Greek layer. And what I mean by this is during kind of the 5th to 8th century BC, there was this expansion of Greek power in Greek colonies in southern Italy. So just like we talked about last time with Sicily, Puglia also has this history of these kind of Greek colonies that were set up all the way back then. And then from there, local tribes established their own identity. Roman authorities came in during the Roman Empire. And then it got really fractured during the Middle Ages up until 1861 when Italy was finally all reunited. But the area we're talking about today in Puglia, we're going to do a smaller section because Puglia is a very large region. It's very lengthy. So what we're going to focus on today is a section that we actually have taken our students, our St. John's students, especially last year in 2019, to the area within Puglia called Salento. Salento, Salento. And Salento is the heel of the tip of Puglia. So it is the very tip of that peninsula, and it has a really interesting combination of cultures. And what I mean by that is all these towns that are set up along the coast and even in the interior of this kind of sub-region of Salento has its influences from places across the sea. So it's really close to places like Albania and Greece, places like Corfu. And so because of that, and because of trade and because of just the history of it, there's a lot of influence, especially from even into the 1990s when Yugoslavia was having its really destructive war. A lot of Albanians actually fled as refugees across to Puglia. So you'll see when you're in Puglia, there's actually a range of accents. Some accents you'll hear a little bit Greek in style, and some actually might be actually have a little bit of an Albanian influence or other kind of Baltic influences. So this is what I'm talking about in terms of that map. So you'll see on this map across the Straits of Otranto, you have Albania and Greece really close. And on some days, you can actually, from some of the towns, on a very clear day, see the Albanian coastline, which is really cool. So the center of Salento is called Lecce. I know a lot of Spanish speakers might think leche and think milk, spelled differently. But Lecce is often regarded in different promotions, but also in terms of its own history, as the Florence of the South. So what Florence is for the Italian Renaissance, Lecce is for the Italian Baroque. By Baroque, we're talking about the artistic era following Renaissance, right after that in the 16th, 17th, and even into the 18th century. There is an amazing stone that is quarried near Lecce, which is called Leccese limestone. And with this limestone, which is very porous and easy to manipulate, there's so much amazing artwork decorating the facades of these limestone buildings. So the history of Lecce itself goes back even before this Baroque era. So I talked about the Greek region and how the Greece kind of cemented its power in ancient Greece. One of the oldest structures in Lecce is actually a 2nd century BC ancient Roman amphitheater, which is actually now used for concerts for every now and then, hopefully again in a post-COVID era. When I talked about the limestone earlier, a great example of this, there's so many churches to talk about, but the Basilica di Santa Croce is an amazing basilica, which is festooned with these amazing detailed ornamentation. And again, this stone is very easy to carve compared to other harder rocks. So there's really intricate designs you can do with it. For example, this church, which you can visit at night, it's absolutely beautiful lit up, has these symbols of different animals holding up the pediments. And these are the different noble families that supported the building of this church. The city center of Lecce itself is absolutely gorgeous and incredibly walkable. It's also mostly flat. And so for those who have limited mobility, it's actually a great place to explore. It's not like one of those Italian hill towns where you have to go up and down so many different flights. But what's really cool about Lecce itself is the walkability of the entire city center. It's not a huge city, so walking from one side to the other at maximum takes 45 minutes, but most walks can be completed within 10 or 15 minutes. This is the center, which is the Piazza del Duomo, which is a gorgeous series of architectures, including the local bishop's palace and the Duomo itself of Lecce. One of the things I really find interesting, I'm using this as a personal picture, Perennici Augusto, which there's a special thing about Southern Italian cuisine, but especially Pugliese cuisine, where it's very simple. And a lot of my students, especially with those with allergies or those who are vegetarians, actually find a lot of the Pugliese cuisine the most appetizing, but also the best in terms of the quality they're getting. So this is a place that I was talking about in terms of kind of the simplicity of Pugliese cuisine. This is one of my favorite places to take students to in Lecce because the average dish, I don't know if you can see that sign in the foreground, is around €2.50. And the most expensive thing in their shop usually is around €5. So it stretches the student's dollar a lot more, and or euro in that case. And it's a really wonderful experience. And it comes in very simple trays. But one of the classic dishes of this region is the orecchiette and broccoli rabe. In the United States, sometimes when we cook this dish, we have it with a lot of cheese and also sausage added to it. I mean, I love sausage and cheese. But the classic Pugliese style, especially around this part of Salento and Lecce, is actually just the orecchiette, which means little ears, pasta with broccoli rabe. And they have the freshest olive oil in this region. I'll talk about this a little bit later. But just the combination of the broccoli rabe cooked with a little bit of garlic and salt and the olive oil makes it pungent enough where it stands out on its own. You don't need anything else. The wine of Puglia, after you're having your little pasta dish, is extraordinary. And it says something where a lot of the wines we know and recognize in Italy usually come from the center and the north. And there's so much complexity to southern wines that has thus far gone unexplored by a lot of Americans and a lot of internationals in general. This is a wine map, kind of excerpt that shows the different wine regions in Puglia. And I'll just be honest myself, before I explored Puglia, I probably only knew two of these wine regions. I knew Primitivo and I knew this Lecce Salento. But besides that, none of these other wine regions I even had the faintest idea of. Another way you can look at these wine maps is actually through their types of wines, red or white wines. So some of these that you might have heard of at your local shop. So Negro Amaro, Primitivo. In the Bari or Lecce area, which we've been exploring, the Bambino Bianco is absolutely wonderful. And then the Greco Bianco, which is a very crisp white wine, is great as well. When you're entering Lecce and you're kind of using Lecce as a home base, it really creates a wonderful way to explore the coastline in every direction. So to the east of Lecce is a place called Torre del Orso, which means the Tower of the Bear. And we've actually had our students walk along these cliff sides, which have amazing panoramas of the surrounding Mediterranean. This is the Two Sisters limestone kind of monuments that were naturally made. They call it the Two Sisters because it looks like two women in very big frilly dresses facing each other. But the seaside as well is absolutely gorgeous. And there's many different coves and beaches you can explore within Salento. So if you're interested in that kind of water-based adventure, this is the place for you. And then while you're on the beach, having something like friselle, which is the kind of, they almost look like a cut open bagel that's been toasted, but the material and the wheat that's being used is very different. But just a simple bread on top of some, their version of almost bruschetta with the tomato, a little basil, maybe some local greens and olive oil is absolutely perfect. Down farther south from Torre del Orso is the place called Otranto, which is a wonderful history of kind of Byzantine, Italian, Baroque history all wrapped into one. The main feature of the town is this beautiful castle that has been preserved since the Middle Ages. And the town itself is really well situated on the Mediterranean and has a wonderfully walkable historic center that's very easy to get around. There's these really amazing castle walls that have actually been converted into walkways. So you can kind of stand atop the parapets and look over the bay before you. It's a wonderful town to explore. We actually, with our students, when we're going to places like Otranto, I gave them a scavenger hunt so they can explore on their own in this very small setting. So Santa Maria is a place at the very tip of the Salento Peninsula. So if I was telling about Puglia, if it's like kind of the heel of the boot, this is the very, very tip of that. So if you're staring off into the southerly direction from this place, if you kept on looking, you couldn't see it, but you'd be trying to spot Africa. So this is facing dead south. What's really cool about this location from the very tip of Salento is that you have these amazing grottos and caves to explore. So a lot of boat tours leave from this point to escort visitors around these amazing grottos. And there's also amazing fishing opportunities here too, if you are interested in that. So pucce is kind of like their sandwiches. I know in American or Italian American cuisine, we hear a lot of paninis, but this is actually a more common snack. This makes a really great afternoon snack. Let's say you're lounging on the boat right off the coast of Santa Maria in Puglia. It's a really nice snack. And they do a mixture, which is typical of different vegetables, meats, and things like that. So we've been kind of rotating around the tip of that peninsula. So going from Torre del Orso south to Otranto, south again to Santa Maria, and now we're going up the western side to Gallipoli. So Gallipoli is one of my favorite towns and how it's situated on the Mediterranean. It's actually almost like this little peninsula that sticks out within a peninsula that's connected by a very thin land bridge. And the historic center of Gallipoli is absolutely wonderful. Our students have really loved exploring this town. It also has a castle, just like Otranto does, which students can explore. And then also the bay itself has a lot of those fishing boats that come in and out. So a lot of the seafood in this area is absolutely wonderful. The historic center has a little bit of that mixture between kind of a Baroque style and a Byzantine style in terms of their churches. But they do have some limestone features, which you found in Lecce. They also have their own beach. So there's beaches all along the peninsula, of course. But this beach in particular is really easy access if you just want to take a quick dip after lunch if you're in Gallipoli. So one of the things that is really big here is seafood, obviously. If you're along the coast, you got to eat the seafood if you're interested in that. So linguine alla mare is a very typical dish in southern Italy. I would also mention that prawns, if you're into prawns, there's a special type of prawn that exists just north of Gallipoli in the Taranto area, which is almost like a large prawn. And they usually either grill it or they fry it and they toss it in breadcrumbs. But this is a great area to really explore that. Branzino, like sea bass and things like that, there's amazing opportunities for that. Now we're going north of Lecce, north of Gallipoli to Ostuni, which is the kind of white city on a hill. Out of all the towns I've mentioned so far, Ostuni is probably the most popular for tourists. And we were going around places like Gallipoli, I didn't really see that many tourists. But when I went to Ostuni, you see a little bit more. And for good reason, it's an absolutely gorgeous town. It has these whitewashed walls, an historic center that is perched on this big, big, big hill. From the top of it, you can actually even see the Mediterranean, even though the town is set in pretty far from the sea. What's really cool about these towns in general, places like Ostuni, is the restaurant scene that's in there because a lot of it's gathered from the local hills around. But also they have these really cool cave restaurants you can explore. So the town, which was built on this kind of volcanic mound, people actually dug their own wine cellars and things like that into the hill. It's just a beautiful place to wander. And this is Ostuni at night or at sunset as the sun begins to set. And then one of the things about this region is it's different types of pasta. So ciagne nincantulate, that word I'm still struggling with. As I said before, some of the vocabulary when you get to southern Italy gets a little bit differentiated from the Italian. But this is a very typical pasta you'll see throughout Puglia, but especially southern Puglia in that Salento region. It almost has that they almost call them little Baroque spirals because it has that very fanciful notion of what Baroque architecture is. And this is usually tossed in a whole host of different things. The most simple thing, if you went to a grandma's house in Puglia, it would be tossed in some kind of tomato sauce with some cheese. But it's absolutely amazing to try. The one thing I want to mention just briefly is I've been talking about olive oil. In southern Italy, it's a big industry, but especially in Puglia. 40% of Italian olive oil, and some years actually up to 50%, depending on the yields, are actually gathered from this one region alone of Puglia. So the reason why this is important is that a few years ago, and it continues to this day, there was actually a bacterial blight that was imported. They think it was imported from some part of South America, but made its way to Puglia and attached itself to these trees. And at the moment, there's actually a huge kind of war going on between the farmers and this bacteria to try to keep this under control. They do not have a vaccine or any kind of ointment that would actually help this process. So what's happening is the EU has made a decision along with the Italian government that these trees have to be burned in order to save the remaining trees because it spreads rapidly from tree to tree. The reason why this is important environmentally is not just because these trees have a huge part of Puglian identity. Some of these trees you're seeing in this photo are hundreds of years old, but also the fact that olive oil prices, you might see those going up a little bit more, especially those which are imported from Italy. So it really impacts their economy, but also really impacts just the culture, but also the world economy as well. Campania is our next section that we're going to explore in this. And so Campania, I know, is really famous for Pompeii, Naples, and the Amalfi Coast. And the Amalfi Coast especially, it's almost synonymous when people think of Campania in tourist ads and things like that. There's been so much written on the Amalfi Coast, which I thought I would do in this section is actually look at the lesser known parts of Campania that I've appreciated. And that's not to say that the Amalfi Coast isn't gorgeous. Places like Positano are beautifully set. But I think it's kind of useful to see other places as well. So within the region of Campania, which now we're going to kind of the shin of the Italian boot, facing the Mediterranean, is its Greek heritage as well. So places like Paestum, which is south of the area of Pompeii, in this long flat range of marshes, is the historic site of this ancient Greek colony, which was founded, and a lot of the buildings were built between the 5th and 4th century BC. So this is a wonderful part to actually our students explore this, to explore the ancient Greek heritage of Italy and those early colonies. So with this next section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a series of towns that I thought were pretty interesting and they have tourists, as all towns do, but they're slightly more off the radar than places like Capri and things like that. So Furore is a beautiful town that's actually set on the Amalfi Coast, but it's set a little bit back in almost this gorge. And because of that, it gets slightly less tourists than places like Positano and Amalfi because of that. It's a really cool town to explore. And one thing I want to mention with the Amalfi Coast is that towns don't just exist on the ocean front, or sorry, the Mediterranean front, but actually a few, kilometers or miles back. So what that means is places like this town, which is not set directly on the Mediterranean Sea, you can still have these amazing views because the cliffs go straight up. And so what's also cool, I don't know how many people will take me up on this, but there's also really cool zip lining in this area if you're interested in that in this town. So if you have kids who are interested in zip lining, that's a really cool thing to do. None of our St. John students went on zipline while we were there. Just want to make sure the Office of International Education is aware of that. The town that I would explore next is a beautiful town that's set in kind of up in the northern part of the Amalfi Coast, Albori. So Albori is nestled in this cavern, kind of like how other kind of mountainous towns in the Amalfi Coast are. But because it's kind of closer to Salerno, the city of Salerno, it gets a little bit less popular. But if you're interested in nature and like wilderness hikes and things like that, it's a really cool town to explore, and they have their own little mini beach as well. Agropoli is actually a place that we took our students on a boat excursion, which was absolutely wonderful. It's a place that's in the Bay of Salerno, so this is farther south in the Amalfi Coast. And they do a lot of really cool boating and fishing excursions. And they have a really beautiful historic town at the top of that cliff as well. Farther down from Agropoli is Castellabate, which is just a little bit farther south than Agropoli and in southern Campania. It's a wonderful town because it has two sections to it. So the section that's on the top is kind of this like historic or just kind of like this perch on top of a hill. And then at the seaside, you actually have another part of the town as well, where they have these beautiful beaches and little castle fortifications to explore. And then one of the things I just want to talk about is the history of Campania when it comes to its kind of royal history. So this palace, the Palace of Caserta, is an incredibly marvelous thing to behold. It is so huge. For example, this is, by some estimations, one of the largest, if not the largest, palaces in Europe. So for those who have been to Versailles, the Palace of Versailles is around 680,000 square feet, which sounds huge until you realize that this palace is 2.5 million square feet, which is just enormous. And the grounds are absolutely beautiful as well. This was built for the Bourbon kings of the Two Sicilies back in the mid-18th century, so around 1752. And the grounds themselves are absolutely gorgeous. So not only do you have these beautiful kind of architecture leading into the castle, to the palace itself, but you also have this beautiful nature to explore. Another town I would just talk about in terms of the interior of Campania in the mountainous regions is Zungoli, which if you took a picture of kind of the fields surrounding it, you would think you're maybe in Umbria or in parts of Tuscany. There's a lot of different organizations that work to give tourists and people who are visiting Italy a better sense of the complexity of the entire country. And there's different websites where you can look at towns that are less touristed. And also the same towns, places like Zungoli, have become famous because they offer those $1 homes to people who want to invest in their towns, because their towns are kind of shrinking in population as people are moving away. So that's something that is also worthwhile. So this is a picture, sorry to go a little bit out of order here. This is the Gardens of Caserta. The slides were a little bit out of order. So this is the Gardens of Caserta, that palace I was talking about, which is larger than Versailles. It has absolutely marvelous rooms as well. All right, so I'm going to end this talk, and I'll open up for Q&A afterwards with Susan on a personal story. So while we're in Campania, I want to talk about a town called Nola. So Nola is not a touristed town at all. It's a kind of a suburban town / city outside of Naples. And before I was visiting Italy quite regularly, I worked for the National Archives. And part of that journey led me to find the naturalization documents for my great-grandfather. And part of those naturalization documents included his place of birth, which was Nola, Italy, a place that I had not heard of before. And so during one of my next visits to Italy, I decided to visit this town because I had heard and done some research on you can visit the local archives of these towns and maybe find some more information on your relatives. So I was looking maybe for birth certificates, marriage certificates, things like that. So I arrive in the town, get a little, B&B close to the center, and start exploring, learning that the town was actually famous because it was the place of death of Caesar Augustus. For those who know a little bit about Italian history, it was also the birthplace of Giordano Bruno, who was kind of one of the early kind of adopters of different Copernican models of the universe. So he was a scientist and a religious scholar. And then so I started exploring this town, which was absolutely it was rustic, but in a really beautiful way, until I came across the archive. And when I went there, it was an absolutely wonderful experience because everyone there was so incredibly helpful. Tourists really don't visit this town that often, so the fact that an American shows up asking for documents is a little bit strange. And they greeted me with such warmth. And after finding the birth and marriage documents of my great-grandfather, which was wonderful, one of the policemen who was in charge of the town said, "Hey, let me look through the phone book and try to call other Cantelmos." My last name is Cantelmo, so other people who might be your relatives. So he calls up this one guy. He gets the number. He calls him up. And when this guy comes, I'm thinking, okay, we could have the same last name, but it doesn't mean we're related. Until after talking to him for a little bit, this gentleman, last name is Cantelmo, he took me back to his house and showed me an album. And in that album, my face just went into shock, because on the left side of this picture is a man I do not know, but on the right side is my great-grandfather. So supposedly my great grandfather had a brother who stayed back in Italy that I was not aware of, my family was not aware of. And these two men, even though one stayed in America, went to America, one stayed back in Italy, um, they were so committed to kind of staying in Italy for the rest of their lives that in 1910, 3 years prior to my great grandfather um, moving to the United States, they bought a funeral plot together. So I think this is a really important example. My grandfather left the United States, left for the 13, this funeral plot was bought, this mausoleum was bought by both the brothers together in 1910. So it really illustrates how sometimes last minute the nature of immigration or migration can be. By buying this plot, my great grandfather totally assumed he would be in Italy for the rest of his life. But then shortly after marrying, he moved to the United States. But what's really cool about this story is not only the history that I was able to explore, but also through meeting this man, realizing he's a relative of mine, exploring the history of my own family. So this is the house that my great grandfather grew up in. This is the church, one of the churches that he got, the church he got married in and received baptism. And then this is the family of the descendants of my great grandfather's brother. So it's amazing. Just I would really encourage you to explore your own ancestral history, where you come from, and there's so many connections. And we text back and forth all the time to really explore those connections as they exist today. So with that being said, I will open up questions, and maybe Susan's back online as well.
Doug, can you hear me? I'm not sure. No?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. That is some story. I can't believe that. Doug did not
Yeah.
tell me this story before we were going to do this. This is a surprise. That must have been so emotional for you.
Yeah, it was absolutely wonderful, especially because my original trip, it was not like I was like, oh, I hope there's family. It was
Right.
more just like, oh, I'm just gonna look at some records, look at some birth and marriage records, maybe get a little bit more complete data from my family, and then
Wow.
head back to Rome, and but it's absolutely amazing because they didn't know we existed either, right? So the
Right.
other side, or they had heard rumors like, oh, there's this brother who's in America.
Right.
So yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I had similar experience, not on my Italian side, but on my mom's side is Irish, and we reconnected with family. It was a picture they had on the mantle for like 98 years, and my
Yeah.
my great uncle, decided to look for his family there, and they connected. So it really is exciting. And now, like you said, you still keep in touch with the family. We do too,
Yeah.
and it's really nice. And then this way, the generations continue, and the family stays connected. That's great. But I think that's a nice way to end this series, because that's the power of travel. It's not only to go and explore museums and churches, but it could be quite interesting where you discover your roots and you understand a little bit more about your ancestry. So that's really great. The other thing I was going to point out is we have this Globetrotter program. If you've been watching these Power Hours for several months, I talk about the Globetrotter program that we have with our donors. And we were going to Paris, and we're postponing it to next October. But me and Doug were talking about after Paris, what's the next place? And we have explored Rome, but we were talking about Lecce, right? That was the
Yeah.
area that we were talking
Yeah.
about. That seems really, really interesting. And like you said, a little off the beaten path. Most tourists don't really explore that area. However, it seems like a lot of Americans come from that region, correct?
Yeah,
They have
so about 2/3 of Italian Americans trace their ancestry through southern Italy. So some
Mhm.
come from northern, like a
Right.
few. But and then within that, Campania is a really big output, that region. But yeah, Puglia as well, Abruzzo, Basilicata. But yeah, especially because there was a big port. There is still a big port there in Bari. So some of them actually took passageway from Bari, connecting to another port and then onto
Right.
America.
Well, I would just say after this, since we're ending this series with Doug, if you're interested in learning about other countries, you're interested in signing up for Globetrotter, and you have some ideas of where to travel, please, share that information. We love to receive feedback and ideas from the donors and alumni. But I see we have questions here.
Yeah.
So why don't we get to those? Let's see what we have here. Everybody loves your story. A terrific tour once again. Thanks, Karen. Lynn has a question. How can you get to this area from major cities in Italy? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess I'll go to for Campania first. Campania is a lot easier. There's a major rail line that you can take from Rome or Florence or Venice. There are express lines that go like the super fast trains. You can also fly in, of course, to the Napoli Airport, Naples Airport. That's a major connection internationally. For Puglia, if you asked me this question 5 or 10 years ago, there was a lot more indirect flights and things like that. You'd have to really find your way there. But now with Brindisi Airport really expanding as well as Bari, those two airports, Bari and Brindisi, are the two airports that have international flights coming into them. Sometimes if you're flying from New York, you'll have to connect through, let's say, London or something like that. Mm-hmm. But they're now having direct flights from other parts of Europe, which is wonderful. In kind of like transiting all these different areas, train is much more common in Campania than it is in Puglia. They do have a train line in Puglia, but just the really major cities. What's really actually great, what's actually grown in Puglia is actually their bus lines. So I was talking about before other areas where like their bus lines aren't the greatest. Puglia has actually tried to really build that up because Lecce is also a really big college town. And so a lot of those kids might not have their own cars, people in college, or they might have just little mopeds. And so they've been using local bus lines to connect, students to the beaches and other towns. So, yeah.
And it's a good question we have from someone else. I guess it's not only reachable then by car, because they were thinking maybe some of these places you're talking about, you need to rent a car. Some of them you do, though, right?
Yes, some you do. So some of the towns that are more remote, if you want more, especially in Puglia, yes, you can depend somewhat on the bus system. But I'd say renting a car is maybe the most cost-effective option, or at least the most time-effective option. And the Salento area has so much packed into a very small part of the peninsula. So it's only like maybe a 20, 30-minute drive from Lecce to Torre del Orso, the beach area. So these are not really long distances.
What about Puglia to Campania?
Oh, that's more of a long distance.
That's long,
I would say
right?
train. Yeah. So I would usually do is
train.
like you don't. Yeah, take a train, then rent a car at the train station or the surrounding area. But those long distances, unless you really want those mountain drives, going through the mountains for long stretches, some people like those.
I would say hire a driver sometimes too, because my experience 2 years ago after our trip to Rome, Marilyn and myself, another alum, we went to visit family, and I might have shared the story. We went into some of those little towns, like what was the one that Zamboli?
Yeah,
it was like a town like Zamboli. Try to drive through some of these towns. It's you have to be really skilled because they're so narrow. The streets are not even streets; they're like tunnels almost. Someone said it may be worth. Wait, sorry, they're popping up and then they're disappearing on me. Wait, let me get it again. Sorry, just give me 1 minute. Someone says, what are the odds Aaron Nola is from Nola?
I don't know, actually. That's a good question. I mean, some last names are from designating like where they're from, where their family's gone. That's a good question, though.
Possibly, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Sue was asking to mention about Bari and Brindisi launching points for the boats to Greece.
Absolutely. There's actually a really creative way you can do a vacation where you fly into Greece, do like an island hopping around Corfu, and then take a ferry boat across to Bari or Brindisi. Like, that's a really good point. Because a lot of times we think of trips of like, oh, I'm going to Italy or I'm going to this country or that country. Like with that, because they're so close together, It's easier.
Right.
It's maybe faster to go from Corfu to Puglia than it is to get from
It's true.
Puglia to Rome or something.
No, that's
Anyway,
true. It looks like there's some maybe comments or something in chat. Unfortunately, I cannot read the chat. Can you read the chats?
I can. So
Yeah, I don't.
Catherine asked how long did it take to travel by car between Puglia and the Campania
Right, we
regions?
covered that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say Puglia to Campania. If you're talking about like Napoli to Lecce, that's around 4.5 hours. So not
It's doable.
incredibly long,
Mm,
but it's also very mountainous. This is not you're going
mm.
across the Apennine Mountains. Like this is not going across Kansas, right? It's
Right, right.
it's might be a headache.
Yeah. That's why you hire the driver sometimes if you can afford it. Sometimes it's really not that expensive. You'd be surprised when you factor it all in. And like I say, the anxiety of driving to some of these towns. So Catherine's
Yeah.
saying, would you recommend then the rail? Should we go that route?
Yes. Yeah.
Probably,
So
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I would say rail flights actually. I mean, if you're flying, let's say you're doing Rome and then you wanted to go to Puglia, like
Mm.
flights actually might be cost effective for you. Um, though I sometimes like the rail. We took the high speed rail from or like as high speed as it goes through southern Italy um, from Rome to Lecce, and actually we didn't even pay for it, but they gave us like champagne on the train because it was such a long train ride.
Oh, nice.
That was kind of nice, yeah.
Did you see
Um,
Lynn's question in the chat about which city to stay in so you can do day trips?
Oh, I did not see that.
Yeah.
So okay, so I would say definitely, I would say for Puglia, that area, Lecce is a great home base.
Mm.
If you want to stay on the water, I would say Otranto is your next best bet because it's not just a very small town that that only has restaurants. There are like pharmacies there. There are like markets and things like that. So Otranto makes a good home base as well. To like kind of relax by the water.
And what about the Amalfi Coast? What is your favorite town? Is it Positano, or I know you mentioned the other town, which I
Yeah.
was not familiar with.
Yeah, so I would say if you're going along kind of the Amalfi Coast, I would say try to stick to one town and just kind of make that your home
Mm-hmm.
base. And then I would actually recommend if you're going into a place like Amalfi, entering through Salerno, which is usually people enter through Napoli and go
Yes.
that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually less crowded to go the other way, so you can take a high-speed train down to Salerno and then take the ferry boats up instead of down. You still have tourists on the boat, but it's a little bit less hectic. But in terms of like where a home base along kind of the
For
Amalfi Coast,
Campania. What
yeah,
about
or Campania,
Campania? Yeah.
I'd say Albori is really nice along the Amalfi
Mm.
Coast because it's kind of I like being nestled in nature.
Yeah, I never heard of
Um,
that city. How
yeah,
did you uncover all of these cities? Because, like I said, I was there for like over a week, and we drove up and down the Amalfi Coast a million times, and never, I don't even recall those cities. So, how do you uncover some of these cities
so I have this
or
like just
towns, I should say?
big kind of not phobia of like just like anxiety around large crowds. Like I'm not
That's good for us. You're helping us.
I know, which is odd because I love Rome so much. You would think, oh, Rome, all the tourists and stuff like that. But a lot of the parts that I like of Rome are a little bit quieter. And so because of that, I just kept on like kind of searching other stuff. Also, I would really recommend if you can Google in Italian. There's some really interesting resources in Italian that are not in English about
Oh,
towns to
okay.
explore, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's like different organizations that really try to push forward smaller or less unknown, more unknown towns
Right.
because they really need the tourist dollars because the tourism dollars are very unevenly split within just
Mm-hmm.
a few specific places.
I was going to say you can visit your relatives, but I can tell you from experience, you always leave the relatives to last
Yeah,
because once you're there, they won't let you go, and
yeah,
then you never get to tour anywhere else, right?
yeah. No,
It's
it's
a nice way to end the trip.
yeah, it
We have
is.
a couple of comments. Someone commented that they met a famous person while they were there. Did you see that one? That comment?
Not see that one. No.
Let me see. I don't know why sometimes they. Oh, Lori said she co-hosted a meeting. Actor Joe Mantegna from Criminal Minds. One set of his grandparents were Pugliese, and he visits often. His character, David Rossi on Criminal Minds, talks about and cooks Italian food often. Thanks, Lori, for sharing that with us. That's great.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And then we also have a question about from Elizabeth. Are you familiar with the museum in
Yes, I was just
Utrino?
about. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that so I think she's talking about the archaeological museum. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that's it's a really wonderful like collection of pieces from like the ancient era, and also that has these like really beautifully restored floors. But yeah, that's a really cool museum. A lot of these towns have their own kind of collections of local artifacts that are really special. And so even if you're in a little village and they have a little museum, it takes €1 to go in or just a donation. Check it out. There might be some really cool things to see.
So what's next? We're organizing our schedule for the winter, for January and February, and for the spring. So you have to come up with another idea. Maybe we do sort of a tour and wine tasting all at the same time. Please give us thumbs up or thumbs down if that's something that'll interest you. We can have Doug help us with that, or if there's another area to explore that goes beyond Italy. But I know Italy is your forte.
Yeah.
Oh, Lynn likes that. Thanks, Lynn. She likes my idea. Thank you. She said food and wine tasting. Well, we'll send you the wine and the food, and you can taste it. We could all taste it from home.
Yeah.
Oh, Bologna. That's true. Bologna is known for the food, right? For their food.
Yeah. So Bologna, its name is La Grassa, which means the fat one. So yeah, there's I think if I was going to continue the series with different places, Emilia Romagna, where Bologna is based,
I've been
has
there.
an
It's
amazing
really nice.
culinary scene. It's been really elevated in recent years to like kind of world status. A lot of Michelin star restaurants, for example, but even beyond that, just like the home cooking, besides
And
commercially,
the Ferrari
yeah,
car.
of course, yeah.
That's
So
where the home base. I've
it's
been there. It's very interesting to go see. You want to
it
buy
is.
one, but unfortunately, it's too expensive.
Yeah. But you can always rent, just like, do
I know that's
a
true.
one-day car rental.
Yeah, I think that's probably beyond my budget too. Although that would be fun. Yeah.
That'd be
No,
fun.
that is a great region. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And the Italian Riviera. That's
Yep.
beautiful also. I've been there.
No,
It's
definitely.
gorgeous. Really
You can
nice.
also do a combination where you do a comparison because the geography doesn't change when you get from the Italian to the French. It's not like the trees are like, oh, now I'm French trees.
Right.
So I would say like doing a combination where you can do like, the like Mediterranean cuisine or wine from the French and the Italian Riviera. Do a little combo. That'd be kind of cool.
It's nice to do that, and then you go to Lake Como or something like that also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever explored the northern region? Like Venice, and then you do Austria, Switzerland, sort of that combination.
I've been to Venice, and then I've gone up to the Dolomites. So that's absolutely a beautiful part. I would recommend that region a lot just because it's a really interesting combination of two different cultures. So it's like Austrian and Italian at the same time. Like they have strudel there. They have like a lot of like Austrian dishes but with an Italian flair, right? So
right.
It's interesting. So yeah, that's a wonderful place to explore.
We're going to put that on for the winter, so then we can do the ski resorts and everything. That would make sense, right? Okay, we're going to think about that. Someone did ask me how you join the Globetrotters. We have two programs. I mean, the alumni have a travel program. But if you donate to the university at the Lachlan level, it's an annual gift to the school, or you make a planned gift and you belong to the McAllen Society. Then we have the tours are a little bit alike, but because I travel with the donors, we try to customize it and kind of add a little bit of a flair to the trip that makes it a little more special because we really appreciate the support to the university. So if anyone's interested, please give me a call, contact me, and we could certainly talk about that.
Sounds
I don't know if we have any more questions.
I think Catherine Olivia was asking about a home base in Sicily. I think we covered it last time, but
Oh, I
I'm
didn't
happy
see
to
that.
talk
Okay,
about.
sure.
Catherine, type in if I'm answering the wrong type of question. But for home bases in Sicily, we talked about flying into a place like Catania, which is the larger city, but then basing yourself in a place that is not so large that it might be overwhelming, but not so small that the connections aren't that great. So
Mm,
places like Taormina was really great. Syracuse, which is a little bit bigger,
Syracuse,
is
yeah.
great. But also if it depends on what you're interested in. So if you really like just like hanging out at the beach, Kefaloon is wonderful on the northern shore. And then on the western part, you have Trapani and those places, Marsala and stuff like that. So um, I guess the context is, what are you interested in? Do you like hanging out at the beach? Do you like, hit museums, things like that? And so I always tell my students when they're traveling, we translate your passion. So what that means is whatever you're interested in is try to find a way to translate that to the local area. So whether that's, fashion, food, history, sports, whatever it might be, try to find a way.
That's a great idea. And for anyone that is new today to the series, I don't think I formally introduced Doug. He's our faculty director for Rome Immersion, and he's also coordinating the Study Abroad Leadership Council. Do you want to just share a couple of facts about that and why
Sure,
you're
yeah. I
coordinating
mean,
this council?
well, yeah. So I think a part of what St. John's is doing during this time across departments is just rethinking how things are done, and then also how we can better serve our students for the future. So part of just, I think, a mission of the Office of International Education going forward would be to think about how how we can better serve students. And I think we're doing an excellent job, but we can always do a more excellent job. So things around, dietary, mental health, financial constraints of studying abroad sometimes. Gender divides. So, for example, in study abroad, not just at St. John's, but across America, you can Google this. There's a lot of actually research articles written on this. Sometimes upwards of 60 to 70% of study abroad students are women, which is amazing. We want women to study abroad. They should keep on studying abroad. They're amazing. But it also means that not that many guys are studying abroad. And we've seen this in some of our numbers across different universities in America. So getting men more interested in travel is really important to me as well. So things like that. Yeah.
That's great. And I'm sure right now, I know I was talking to another professor. We're going to have, thanks to Doug's connections, we're going to have a very interesting power hour the end of October with the French professor. Since we're not able to travel in October, we're bringing the power hour live to an adorable little restaurant in Jackson Heights, Queens called Bistro Eloise. And Vincent, who's the owner, is right off the boat from France, and he will be on the panel. And we may have a couple other professors, all part of the study abroad program. And I'm looking forward, to that. But speaking with the professor, he was telling me that right now, obviously, the study abroad program is on hold. They're hoping to reinstitute it in the spring. But what is actually, how are you gearing up for that? To start traveling? First, you obviously have to wait and see if you can get into
Yeah.
some of these countries, right?
Yeah. So it's not just what United States policy is in terms of
Mm,
travel, but it's
hmm.
also the spread rate in the United States is comparable to other countries. So, for example, at the current moment, from my understanding, only two countries in the EU are allowing American tourists: Ireland and Croatia. I've been listening to some Irish news. There's been some backlash again from Irish people saying, "Why are we letting Americans into our country, especially at a time like, especially Americans maybe from Texas or other
I know,
places that could have been hotspots."
right?
So that's one hurdle. Another hurdle is just making sure the safety and concern of parents and their students are being heard, and giving different opportunities for those students. So
Hmm.
a lot of this, I think, is outside any of our control, but
Yes,
being prepared for different scenarios is the best way to go. So
definitely. Just in case, hopefully all of this will definitely get better
yeah,
in the next year. So you have to be prepared. You can't
yeah.
be waiting till the last minute.
And
Because
I
I'm
think
sure the
what's,
students
yeah,
are itching to get on a
they are,
plane,
yeah.
right? I'm
And
sure.
And I would say, I think a real big advantage of the St. John's system versus a lot of other universities that do study abroad is that we predominantly do not use third party in terms
Right.
of study abroad. So, for example, a ton of other colleges, in the New York area or, in the United States, they'll say they have study abroad programs, but what they do is they pass the
Rent
students along
out,
to
right?
a third party operator. The
Right.
students are staying at like a hotel somewhere or whatever it is. Especially when it comes to Paris and Rome, these are St. John's University campuses and locations. So that's St. John's University staff. The students use storm cards just like they do on the Queen's campus. So because of that infrastructure, I think we're a lot better prepared for different scenarios going forward. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's great. Well, I'm reading all these comments. They want the series to continue. So, I always say, we'll definitely, I mean, if you enjoy this, we would love to offer it again. Hopefully, Doug, your schedule permits you to, plan a couple more power hours with us.
Sure.
We're pretty much booked to December, but we'll see, maybe in the fall we can add another one to the schedule if your schedule allows. And like we were saying with the Dolomites, I think that would be really interesting to do in the winter time, maybe January or something like that. So we'll talk, but we'll definitely, Doug's not going to go away. I'm not going to let him.
Okay.
Because
Sounds
we
good.
really enjoyed the series. So thank you so much. It really was a wonderful escape. I mean, especially when we started off, we were quarantined and we needed something fun, and it was sort of like a meditation in a way. And I want to thank you because it really did help me, and I hope it helped a lot of our attendees, people that are viewing the sessions, the shows. I hope it did the same for you too. So thank you again for being with us today. We appreciate it. We love staying connected to all of you. I look forward to Tuesdays all the time. And please, please share your feedback, share your ideas. I always want to think outside the box and love to offer anything that you're interested in. So have a great day. And please, anybody who doesn't have power, I hope your power comes on real soon. All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Doug.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.